They think strength looks like standing tall, like a spine that never bends and a face that never flinches. Strength, to most, is the polished product, not the raw material it's made from. But real strength looks like gritted teeth at 2 a.m. It's choosing not to scream when you want to. It's holding eye contact with someone who's trying to undo you and not blinking first. It's the restraint to not retaliate, even when every cell in your body aches for justice or revenge, or to simply be seen. Real strength doesn't wear a crown. It wears scars. This is for the ones who never got a warm-up round, who didn't ease into adulthood, but were thrown into the deep end of human pain early and often. This is for the people who got fluent in suffering, not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. You learned how to keep breathing when your chest felt like it was full of glass. You figured out how to smile when your insides were collapsing. You got used to faking normal while holding back a tidal wave of rage, confusion, loneliness, and heartbreak. The world didn't teach you how to thrive. It taught you how to endure. You mastered the art of invisibility when it was unsafe to be seen. You studied how to please people who were incapable of giving you peace. You became the adult in the room before you were ever given a childhood. And now people call you impressive. They call you resilient. They call you inspiring. But they don't know the cost. They don't know that your drive is survival, not ambition. That your independence is the result of betrayal, not confidence. That your so-called grit is just what happens when tenderness was never safe. So you buried it deep beneath achievement, perfectionism, humor, and the refusal to need anyone. But here's the twist. The same suffering that tried to shatter you also shaped you. Yes, it took parts of you, but it also gave you tools. Awareness, strategy, stamina, a kind of X-ray vision for other people's pain. A radar for emotional instability, a built-in filter for who is safe and who is pretending to be. And that's why you're still here. Not because life spared you, but because it didn't. And you adapted. But adaptation is not the same as healing. Endurance is not the same as peace. And survival, while noble, is not the same as freedom. So let's stop pretending that suffering is just something you get through. Suffering shapes you, and if you let it, it will strengthen you. But only if you're willing to confront what it made you become. Not all strength is healthy. Not all endurance is wise, and not all pain is a badge of honor. But if you're ready to look honestly at what your suffering taught you and what it cost you, then you can choose something more than just survival. You can choose to become powerful. Let's begin. No one sat you down and said, "You are now entering a training program in emotional endurance." But that's exactly what it was. Your suffering wasn't just chaotic, it was educational. Even if the lessons were cruel, you didn't just live through hard times, you absorbed them. Your body remembers what your mind had to forget. You learned how to freeze when it wasn't safe to fight. You learned how to overachieve to avoid being abandoned. You learned how to say, "It's fine," while your chest burned from swallowing the truth. There was no safety net. So you became your own net. You became the planner, the soother, the translator, the forgiver. You learned to detect disappointment in a parent's eyes before they even opened their mouth. You decoded tones, silences, footsteps. You built a radar system so precise it could predict an emotional storm from a single shift in atmosphere. And slowly, that suffering installed a belief system, one that still runs the show today, that comfort is dangerous, that needing is weakness, that trust is foolish, that rest is laziness, that emotions are weapons, that good things don't last, that if you're not useful, you're disposable, Those weren't conscious choices. They were survival scripts. And you executed them perfectly. You became brilliant at wearing the mask. You looked fine. You performed fine. You became so good at surviving that you forgot it wasn't the same as living. Now, here's the trap. The world rewards this kind of training. You're the one who gets promoted because you never complain. You're the one who gets trusted with the crisis because you never say no. You're the one who gets praised for how calm and capable you are, while slowly bleeding out beneath the surface. Because your suffering became an identity, one that others admire, and you can't afford to drop. But deep down, you know. You know that your strength is often just muscle memory, that your independence is a scar, that your resilience is just another way to say, I've never had permission to fall apart. So let's tell the truth. You weren't just surviving hard times, you were being trained by them, trained to make others comfortable, trained to suppress your needs, trained to keep the peace no matter the personal cost. You were handed scripts, and you performed them so well, you forgot they were never yours to begin with. But here's the thing about scripts. They can be rewritten, and they have to be, because if you don't interrupt the training, you'll keep passing it on to your children, to your partners, to your colleagues, to yourself, again and again. You were trained to survive, but you were meant to live, and to live fully, you'll need a different kind of strength now. Not the kind that hides the pain, the kind that transforms it. That's what we build next. There's a cost to being the strong one, not the obvious cost. Not the bruises, the chaos, the memories. Those are loud. They demand attention. This is about the quieter cost, the one that doesn't scream, the one that creeps in slowly, the one you don't even notice until everything hurts. Because when you live in survival mode for too long, you stop recognizing what peace even feels like. Stillness starts to feel suspicious. Love feels like a risk. Joy feels like bait. You're used to the edge. You're calibrated to crisis. So when things are calm, you either unconsciously sabotage it or you numb out. Because somewhere along the way, your nervous system learned this. Safety isn't safe. It's a setup. And that's where the cost accumulates. It looks like chronic tension in your jaw, your back, your gut. It looks like never being able to fully exhale. It looks like scrolling instead of sleeping, because silence feels louder than chaos. It's that part of you that flinches when someone is too kind, that tightens when someone says, I love you, that secretly believes you'll pay for happiness the next day, because that's what always used to happen. And here's the worst part. People praise you for it, for your independence, your competence, your emotional control. They don't realize those things were built from absence. Absence of help, absence of safety, absence of anyone showing up before you broke. They applaud your composure without asking what it cost you to hold it together. So let's ask it now. What did it cost you? What did it cost you to be the strong one, the reliable one, the one who never asks for anything? How much intimacy did it cost you to stay safe? How much softness have you traded in exchange for control? How many opportunities for real connection have you avoided? Just because you didn't want anyone to see how much you were still carrying. This is the slow burn. It doesn't explode. It erodes. It wears you down in your quiet moments. It isolates you even when you're surrounded by people. It makes you feel like your life is happening next to you instead of inside you. And eventually, it catches up. The breakdown comes in whispers, not roars. Not with drama, but with fatigue. Not with panic, but with the slow, haunting question, is this really all there is? The answer is no. This isn't all there is. But to claim something more, you have to start naming the cost. Not to wallow in it, but to stop paying it unconsciously. You're not weak for wanting more. You're not selfish for needing softness. You're not broken because the armor no longer fits. It means you're evolving. It means the pain that made you strong is no longer the only teacher you need. It's time to choose a different curriculum. He was the kind of man who never raised his voice. Not because he didn't feel things, but because he didn't trust what might happen if he let anything out. He showed up early, paid on time, didn't interrupt, said things like, "I've handled worse. I've got it under control. You just crack on, don't you?" The therapist asked. "Did it hurt you?" He looked confused for a moment, then shrugged. "I wouldn't call it hurt. Just life. Some people get lucky, some people get tough. On paper, he was solid. He had a good job, paid the mortgage, showed up for others, never made a fuss. He was the one everyone relied on, but no one really knew. He didn't tell people about the years spent on high alert, about the silence he used as armor, about the childhood lessons that taught him, don't cry, don't need, don't speak unless spoken to, and definitely don't trust. His father called him resilient. His friends called him rock solid. His boss called him reliable. And they were right, but none of them knew the price he paid to earn those words. What they didn't see was the ache he felt in rooms full of laughter, unable to join in, the way he checked every exit, the way he flinched at kindness, the way he kept people at arm's length, not to be cruel, but because intimacy once came with punishment. The therapist didn't try to dig, didn't push him to share more. She just sat in the silence, calm and unafraid. And for the first time, he realized something strange. He wasn't being managed. He wasn't being evaluated. He wasn't being fixed. He was being witnessed. It wasn't a breakthrough, no dramatic sobbing or cinematic epiphany. Just one quiet thought rising to the surface. I'm tired of holding all of this alone. He didn't say it out loud, not yet, but the seed was planted. He left that session not transformed, but rattled, because someone had finally seen past the shell, and it didn't kill him. It didn't collapse the structure. It made him curious. What would it be like to not always have to be the strong one? What would it feel like to take up space, real space, without the shame? He's not a client. He's not a case study. He's a mirror. And whether you recognize yourself in him completely or just partially, the message is the same. You don't have to keep performing survival. Not when healing is on offer. Not when real connection becomes possible. Not when peace is something you can choose, not chase. The strong, silent man isn't weak for breaking. He's wise for softening. He's powerful for evolving. He's not collapsing. He's becoming. You've been taught to wear your suffering like it's a badge. But what if it's not a badge? What if it's a burden you've just gotten very good at carrying? The moment of awakening rarely comes like lightning. It arrives in subtler ways, like noticing that the very strengths you're praised for are the same ones that keep you exhausted. People call you dependable, but you never learned to depend on anyone. People say you're focused, but you can't remember the last time your mind felt quiet. People admire your calm, but they don't realize it's a shutdown, not serenity. This is when the inner conflict begins. You've outgrown your mask, but it's fused to your identity. You want more, not just more success, more peace, more love, but more of you. And suddenly, a deeper question emerges. Who am I without the suffering? Because for years, pain gave you purpose. It gave you edge, drive, proof. You became someone because of what you endured, and the thought of letting go of that pain feels risky. It's as if softening will erase your strength, As if healing means admitting you are broken, as if resting means you're lazy, as if being loved without earning it means you're weak. But here's the truth you've been circling around. You are not your pain. You are what survived it. You are what grew from it. You are what refused to turn bitter when bitterness would have been easier. You are what stayed open even when life gave you every reason to shut down. And now you're being called to the next level of strength, the kind that doesn't need applause, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything, the kind that says, I no longer need my trauma to justify my greatness. This is not about forgetting the past. It's about releasing your identity's dependency on it. You can honor the pain without making it your personality. You can acknowledge the strength it gave you and still choose softness. You can be proud of your scars and still stop picking at the wound. This is what awakening feels like. You look at the old armor and realize it's too heavy to carry into the life you want next. And maybe, for the first time, you start asking a different kind of question. What if I don't need to be impressive anymore? What if I just get to be free? That freedom won't come from grinding harder. It won't come from another accolade. It begins the moment you realize you don't need to keep proving how strong you are. You already proved it. Now, it's time to become something greater than strong. It's time to become yourself. Carl Jung believed that we all carry a shadow, not the poetic kind, the psychological kind, the parts of ourselves we repress, deny, or disown, because at some point someone taught us those parts weren't acceptable, and for people shaped by suffering, that shadow is often packed with things like fear, grief, helplessness, need, not because those things make you weak, but because somewhere along the way, you were trained to believe they made you vulnerable. And in a world that punished vulnerability, you learned fast. Bury it, mask it, outrun it. So you built a self the world could accept. You made yourself useful, productive, competent. You became the strong one. And it worked until it didn't. Because whatever you exile into your shadow doesn't just disappear, it festers, it leaks. It shows up in your reactions, your relationships, your inability to rest, your tendency to dismiss your own pain while rescuing others from theirs. Jung called this process disintegration, not because your life falls apart, but because you're split internally. The version of you that the world sees and the version of you that's still hiding in the dark. True healing begins when you stop trying to be better and start trying to be whole. And wholeness requires something radical. Integration. You meet the parts of yourself you once banished. The scared child, the angry teenager, the exhausted adult. You invite them back into the story, not to let them run the show, but to finally hear what they've been trying to say. You don't just look in the mirror, you look into the shadow behind it, and you realize the strength you built wasn't fake, it was just incomplete. Because without access to your full self, your power is limited. You're always bracing, always editing, always fighting yourself. But when you integrate, something shifts. You stop performing peace and actually feel it. You stop earning your worth and start knowing it. You stop being terrified of your needs and start meeting them without shame. This is the essence of Jung's process of individuation, the path to becoming your true integrated self. It's not about being good or nice or impressive. It's about being real. And being real means saying, yes, I've suffered. Yes, it shaped me. Yes, I learned to survive. But I'm done surviving now. I want to live as a whole person. I want to stop hiding behind performance and start embodying truth, not the polished version, the powerful one, the one who feels, the one who falls, the one who stands back up not to prove anything, but because it's simply what they do. This is the psychology of reclaiming yourself. It's not easy, but it is sacred. Let's stop speaking in theory for a moment. Because maybe you're watching this and thinking, all right, I get it. I've got armor, I've got shadow. But What the hell do I do now? Here's where we begin. You start by noticing the places where your suffering still speaks for you. Ask yourself, when someone gets too close, do I shut down? When I feel vulnerable, do I joke instead of speak the truth? When I feel unseen, do I overperform or withdraw? These aren't just habits, they're trauma strategies. Brilliant ones, but outdated. They were built by a version of you that needed them, but you're not that version anymore. And the strategies that once kept you safe may now be keeping you stuck. So here's your work. Start tracking when you feel the urge to perform instead of be. Catch yourself when your body tightens and your voice goes flat. Don't judge it, just notice it. That's step 1, awareness. Step 2 is harder, softening. Let someone see a crack in the armor, not the whole wound, just a glimpse. You don't have to trauma dump, you don't have to collapse. But when someone asks how you are, try this. Pause, breathe, and say something real, even if it's simple, even if it's small. I'm tired, actually. Or I'm figuring some things out. Or I don't have the words yet, but I'm here. Watch what happens when you stop managing people's perception of you, when you stop curating strength and let them meet your humanness. Most of them won't run. And the ones who do were never safe to begin with. Now, step 3. Redraw the boundary between pressure and permission. You are allowed to say no, even when you're capable. You are allowed to rest, even when there's more to do. You are allowed to matter, even when no one needs you. The child in you was taught that your value came from what you could endure or provide, but the adult in you gets to rewrite that. You are valuable because you exist, not because of your productivity, not because of your trauma story, not because of how well you can pretend you're fine. The work is slow, and it's not glamorous. But here's how you'll know it's working. You'll stop flinching when someone is kind. You'll stop second-guessing every good thing. You'll stop needing to be the strongest person in the room just to feel safe in it. And bit by bit, you'll notice. You don't live on edge anymore. You're not scanning for danger in every silence. You're not shrinking or performing. You're just here, fully, as you are. No performance, no punishment, just presence. That's the shift. And that's where strength becomes freedom. You don't get to choose the pain that shaped you, but you do get to choose what you do with it. And that's what becoming is. It's the decision to stop surviving your life and start inhabiting it. You've carried things most people couldn't even name, and for a long time that made you feel powerful. But now you're realizing that true power isn't about how much weight you can bear. It's about knowing when to set it down. You've been conditioned to equate strength with suffering, but suffering isn't your identity, it's your origin story. And origins are just that, beginnings. You don't owe the past your future. The armor served you once, it kept you alive. But now, it's heavy. It doesn't fit the life you're trying to build. So here's the invitation. Let yourself become someone who is not always fighting, someone who is not always bracing for loss, someone who doesn't need pain to feel real. Let yourself become someone who is peaceful, not because the world is gentle, but because you've made peace with the shadow, because you no longer need to punish yourself to prove your worth, because you've stopped needing applause for your suffering and started giving yourself permission to be whole. That's not weakness. That's mastery. To live in a world that taught you to harden and choose to stay soft, to be betrayed and still show up open, to be overlooked and still love yourself deeply. That's not survival, that's alchemy. Becoming isn't about burning down everything that came before. It's about reclaiming it, weaving it into something greater, making art out of what once almost ended you. So if you've ever looked at yourself and thought, "I'm tired of always being strong," here's your permission. You don't have to be. You can be supported. You can be seen. You can be held, not because you're broken, but because you're human. And that humanity, that's the most powerful thing you'll ever own. So step out from behind the mask. Lay down the weight. Stop performing survival. You don't have to prove anything anymore. You already did. Now it's time to become the version of you that doesn't just endure life, but builds one. One rooted in truth, one wrapped in calm, one forged from suffering but not owned by it. You are not who hurt you. You are not the pain you've carried. You are not the story you had to survive. You are who you decide to be now. You are becoming. And this time, no one else is writing the script.